to the Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay, breaking down tonight's Tuesday 6-game NBA slate. And it's a fun one. I'm always inclined to liking these slates where they're 6-7 games. They're kind of my favorite size.
Definitely. Going to be a big correlation night, going to be a big night to sort of figure out which teams and which matchups you like the most. But I think there are some pretty obvious and potentially chalky options. So we'll get into that.
Yeah. Looking at the game totals, I mean, you're looking at 227 Golden State and Washington. That's your top option. There's a 13-point spread in that one. Warriors always at home. It's always a potential for a blowout, but I don't know. I mean, the Sixers were able to keep things remotely close for some players to do some damage. Dallas with their backup squad the other night, they did. Washington, I mean, they got respectable scores. I mean, they can keep this one close for the longest time. But still, it's a small concern.
Yeah, I think in terms of that game, you have to be worried. But on a 6-game slate, it might be a little intriguing to go contrarian and maybe do a stack of John Wall and somebody else just in case it hits. But yeah, I'd stick to more tournaments if you're going to be playing Wizards tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some nice points per dollar plays, like a guy like Draymond Green. I mean, just at that price tag, he always just seems to get it done regardless of a blowout. So I think, getting exposure to him, he's kind of usually the top guy to do it with.
Definitely.
Looking at other options, you got OKC and Detroit, 215. And this is one we were kind of shocked on. I mean, it's just a 3-point spread. I know Oklahoma City's on the back-to-back here on the road at Detroit, but
even with those factors, I don't think it should close the gap that much. And that line makes me really uncomfortable because any game is a blowout concern if you're playing the Thunder, in my opinion. I mean, you look at Russell Westbrook, I don't see anyone on Detroit stopping him necessarily. I don't see anyone stopping Durant. So, I mean, most likely, I still see this as a pretty big win for the Thunder. But I obviously Vegas sees things differently, so you have to change your view a little bit. But yeah, I would look at this game as more a Thunder favored by a little more in sort of my own sort of take.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there because I think if you're looking, obviously offense flows through Drummond at times, but I mean, if you look at Westbrook and Durant, if they get out to a hot hand early on in the game, I mean, they're not going to be able to force feed Drummond down low. You're going to look at Marcus Morris, Tobias Harris, Reggie Jackson, Caldwell Pope as being guys to have to pick up the offensive load to keep up. And are they capable of doing it? Sure, but how often does it happen? But I mean, Vegas is anticipating that to happen, I guess. So
right. And again, for Drummond tonight, it might be a little tough for him with Ibaka and sort of Steven Adams and his mustache down there. So
yeah, I mean, can we roster Steven Adams' mustache for $3,000?
I'm in.
Orlando, Brooklyn, 211, 6.5-point spread there. Vucevic is out. Orlando with a nice 109 total, which is equivalent to OKC's 109. Cleveland, Houston, that's going to be a popular game tonight, just a 2-point spread.
Yeah.
Both teams, I mean, kind of in a flow offensively of late. LeBron is sitting out tonight. And I think Houston-Cleveland is probably my most appealing matchup of the night.
Yeah, that one for sort of those mid-tier players, and I really like that Nets Magic game for value. I think those are the two games you should really sort of build your lineups around, and that's definitely the ones I'm going to be building around.
Yeah, that's a good call there. I think those two are going to be the kind of core to my lineups. Looking at Philly and Charlotte, 207. Charlotte has a 109 total, which is second on the slate, but just a shade over the Thunder. The blowout concern is there at the 11.5. The one thing with Philly, though, they're so banged up. They're so bruised. I mean, their starters are going to be playing anyway. I mean, Philly's been bad, yes, but I mean, 11.5-point spread, 6-game slate. I think there's still some plays in this game.
Yeah, and there's some interesting contrarian plays on that team that could potentially that are on super hot streaks. I mean, obviously Ish Smith, if you've been playing, you know sort of what he's done in the last 2 games. But I think it's interesting to be contrarian tonight and maybe see that through and hope he maybe continues that streak. So I mean, there's definitely some interesting ideas there as well.
Yeah, definitely. Indiana and Chicago, that's the last one of the night, sitting at 201. Obviously, two teams that um, are in completely different spots as far as the playoffs go. Chicago is chasing. They're trying to get in here. They're going to need to roll out their starters and kind of play them heavy minutes if they have any sort of chance in this one. And on the back-to-back with the guys' injuries, we'll kind of go into that more. But I think Chicago might be the only team outside of Pau Gasol, that I really don't see
Yeah,
myself playing that much tonight.
right. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It's just that there isn't many appealing options in that game for the Bulls. So
Yeah, not at their prices with their the way they're playing right now.
right.
And I know it's a smaller slate, but there just seems to be so much more attractive options.
Yep.
Looking at point guard tonight, no injuries to really deal with, but there are some injury concerns that deal with point guards. You're looking at Kyrie Irving going to get a nice bump tonight with LeBron James out, and Irving's been a little bit up and down, but when James has been out, he's been solid. And in this matchup, sure, he takes on a pesky Patrick Beverly, but him and Love are going to definitely lead the way.
Man, that's a really nice play right there. I even compared to some of the top options tonight, maybe he doesn't have the same upside, but that floor is it's pretty sky high for me tonight for Kyrie.
Yeah, you're looking at a 106 total with Cleveland in a matchup against Houston's defense, and what's expected to be a pretty competitive game and high scoring. Um, at that price tag, he's likely your top points per dollar play on the board tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it kind of makes you look at Kemba at 8,200, and then you look. I'm talking about DraftKings, obviously, but you look at Kemba at 8,200, Kyrie at 69, and that kind of takes Kemba out of play for me tonight. I know you might have a little different take on that with Kemba, but yeah, I don't think I'm touching him tonight.
Yeah, I think because, like you mentioned, the pricing difference takes a little bit of a hit away from Kemba just because Kyrie's sitting right there. But I think if you're on FanDuel and you're playing 2 point guards, or if you're even going to play 2 point guards on DK, pairing Kemba and Kyrie over is still a cheaper option in comparison to the other point guards on this slate. And Kemba definitely has upside in this matchup if it stays close. Definitely a GPP only play for me just because his floor has been a little bit lower over the last week or so. Either way, I think looking at that price, FanDuel 7,800 and 7,000, and then all of a sudden you're looking at Wall, Curry, Westbrook near 10K.
Right.
It's a pretty significant difference from those three top options, and it can save some cash, but you're not dropping your upside down too much.
He is pretty much on an island there, so yeah, it does make sense, I guess. But yeah, Kyrie is definitely the value play of the night for sort of those non-min priced guys.
Yeah. Looking up top, you got Curry, Westbrook, and the Wall. Quite a selection, quite a way to difference yourself because all three are in play. Westbrook, he just seems to triple double almost every night. Did have a bad game against Detroit last time out. I really don't expect him to be much of a down game tonight with the way he's playing, but
Right.
It's tough for me because I still think I like Curry and Wall over him a little bit more. Wall more, especially if you're banking on that game staying close and kind of taking shots at that Warrior side as well.
That's fair. I guess it's just where's the ownership percentage going to be when you look at those three? It seems that Curry usually has the ownership edge in terms of most nights, just because it's Steph Curry and people want to plug him in and watch him play. Obviously, they do that with Westbrook too, but with Curry's season and the way the Warriors have been playing, I think ownership percentage is going to be a little higher on him tonight. So, all things considered, pretty even. The price is negligible, so I don't know. They're pretty even for me. I lean Westbrook slightly, but yeah, they're all good. They're all good plays.
Yeah, you're looking. I think as far as ownership goes, I think Westbrook is going to be the lesser owned out of those three.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be the different route because I think Wall and Curry, people for the box score, people that are going to go back and look and watch, look at that last game the Wizards and Golden State Warriors played. It was the Curry and Wall show. They both put up, I believe, 140, 130 fantasy points combined. So I think they're going to look at that and just kind of plug them in. And with that total, who can blame them? Can definitely has the potential to happen again, but that should definitely lower Westbrook's, ownership a bit. So if you want to say Curry has just kind of an average game tonight and lets others do the work, Westbrook can take a take on as well. And we've seen Wall have disappointing games as well, but none too many of late.
Right. Point being, they all have 60 fantasy point upside tonight, but who knows?
Yeah.
Let's go.
You were mentioning the hot hand earlier, and that's certainly been Ish Smith. He's taken just kind of a bigger role. I mean, I think I like the Philly offense a little bit more with Okafor out. It's a little bit more diverse, but really over the last 2 games there, I mean, you're looking, he just missed the triple-double against Portland, performed well against Golden State, and now heading back home against Charlotte. I mean, can he do it again? That's the question.
Tougher matchup, so you're kind of looking at more of a contrarian play. I don't think he's going to be in anyone's sort of top plays tonight, but I think it's intriguing for a guy that's shown that much upside the last 2 games to just sort of ride it out. And I mean, his price isn't crazy, so I don't think either way he's going to kill you. But I think for tournaments, he's super intriguing just because of that price and the potential upside there.
Yeah. And I think that price tier is kind of intriguing. Ish Smith, Derrick Rose, Reggie Jackson, Elfrid Payton.
Mm-hmm.
I can legitimately buy into playing one of those guys. Out of all 4, I can buy into playing one of them and pairing them with someone else. And I think they become $1,000 pivot off of Irving tonight. And if Irving goes for 40, but if Jackson, Payton, Rose go for 40, you're saving $1,000. It's also just getting a little bit diverse. You can even toss in the Reggie Jackson revenge game at home. I mean,
that's a good point. And again, I'm not saying Ish Smith has the same upside as Kyrie, but I think it's more similar than you generally perceive. So I do think he could get into that 35, 40 fantasy point range. And if he does that, like you said, you're saving $1,000. So that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, I mean, and if you can't move that $1,000 to somewhere more useful, then Irving's just a safe play. But I think that tier is going to be kind of an interesting play in tonight's 6-game slate. So,
agreed.
Looking cheaper, there's guys like Jeremy Lin, Shane Larkin. Shane Larkin, I mean, he's kind of the better punt price guy that you could take a look at tonight. 26 minutes over the last 5 games, played 29. Although he just scored 7 real points against Miami there, still 8 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 steals, 6 steals in the last 2 games. I mean, he's doing it against tougher opponents, Miami, Indy, Cleveland, Charlotte, and now gets Orlando. So,
yeah, and at his price, he's in cash game and tournament territory, which is sort of intriguing because you wouldn't normally see sort of that floor raise so high for a guy at 3,800, but he's been super consistent lately. So one of the safer options of the whole slate, which is pretty wild for a guy that's 3,800 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I mean, he can really open things up.
Definitely. And yeah, Lynn, like you said, he had 1 down game in there, but 3 out of the last 4 have been really good for you. And I mean, he's still only 4,200, so pretty solid role and a pretty solid matchup for him tonight.
Yeah. Pat Beverly is another kind of honorable mention. Definitely a GPP play, but definitely does have 30-point upside. And I think in this matchup against Kyrie Irving in a kind of faster-paced game, it's going to be a playoff-like game. Pat Bev is worth a look as well.
Definitely.
Looking at shooting guard tonight, and once again, there are some heavy top options. James Harden, he's a guy who's just playing like a man possessed of lately. Obviously, in a matchup that doesn't feature LeBron James, Cleveland takes a step back defensively. You're looking at just a 2-point spread here. Harden's got to carry his team because they're battling for a playoff spot, and I think he's definitely an interesting guy to pair up with Love and Irving in a lineup and kind of go with a little mini game stack there.
Yeah, I'm totally with that idea, and I think if you would be smart to at least make 1 or 2 lineups with that sort of base roster construction. I mean, you just look at what Harden's done the last, 7 games or so. I mean, he's been over 60 points for the last seven games. So, I mean, you can't really fade him at this point. You can play other big big ownership guys with him, but I don't think it'd be smart to fade him at this point, especially with some of the low priced options you can to get him fit in anyway.
Yeah, I think the only way you might be fading him is if you're just kind of going into a direction and attacking a different game in general, kind of like how you are with this one. But yeah, I mean, my exposure to Harden's going to be pretty high tonight. It's going to be really tough to fade him just with his usage and the way he's been playing lately.
Right.
But I mean, there are some other plays. Nicholas Batum, GPP play if you're kind of hoping that game stays close. I mean, the guy's been playing really well. A cash game floor, but I don't think in tonight's matchup I'll be touching him in cash. Oladipo is kind of my preferred play with he and being back and starting tonight in another game without Vooch, because before his injury with the wrist, which I guess is still something to be concerned about, he's been on fire.
Yeah, no, I think I definitely like Oladipo over Batum when they're price considered, but Batum does have that upside, and that's sort of he's kind of taken that upside, not necessarily taking it from Kemba, but if I'm gonna play those two guys in tournaments, I sort of see Batum as the guy with the 50 fantasy point upside now. That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think Oladipo is kind of up there and upside as well. But I mean, I can't argue against Batum as being a similar type player.
Oh yeah, I was speaking to Batum versus Kemba Walker. I think Oladipo, obviously.
I'll see myself out.
No, Oladipo definitely the better play of those two. Even with the wrist concern, he's just been mini Giannis basically lately with his production.
Yeah. Looking elsewhere, I mean, you got Jimmy Butler, who's been in that 30 range, but I just think his production can come a lot cheaper right now.
You look at that price and you automatically want to play him, but it just hasn't been there lately. And I think we sort of have to trust this trend until we start to see him turn it around. So even in a matchup you'd normally want to exploit for him, I don't necessarily trust it.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a factor of just the health issues for him, if he's just burned out physically and can't get it going right now, but he hasn't been great. And a complete opposite ends of the spectrum here, Klay Thompson, who's been just money from three. I mean, over the last 6 games, he's made 39 three-pointers, shooting over 55%. And I like Klay Thompson. I also hate him because he has to score 40 points, real points, to get you 40-plus fantasy points.
Again, I think you can make an Ish Smith, Klay Thompson sort of don't let the streak end tonight with their hot streaks lineup. But yeah, no, I don't know what to think. 43 point attempts in the last 3 games, so it's tough to say that's going to end. And even on a bad night, he's going to be making 35 to 40% of his threes. So if he's shooting that many threes, obviously the peripheral stats aren't always going to be there for him, but I mean, 25 to 30 real points and maybe a few rebounds and maybe a steal, you're looking at 35 fantasy points. So yeah, still a decent value at his price.
Yeah, I mean, Washington's one of the more poor perimeter defenses in the league.
Right.
They're 27th in opponent 3-point percentage. So, I mean, he certainly has the matchup to keep this one continuing tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of taking a big jump here, going down. Guys like Monta Ellis, Bradley Beal. I mean, you can look at Bradley Beal at that price tag and kind of hope for the best. And not really on my radar tonight.
Right. And again, I think you look at that big game the other day, that he wasn't that great in regulation. You kind of got lucky in overtime if you played him. So that 41 points is pretty inflated.
I mean, he definitely has that sort of upside if he can get hot. I mean, going up against Klay Thompson, I'm not really too thrilled about it, just size-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, if you're kind of banking on that one staying close, and I don't mind the price because he is below 6K, so it's kind of intriguing if you're kind of going with the correlation play. But I'd rather lean a little bit lower. You can look at Bogdanović still. I mean, he's just kind of that safer option outside that Miami game, which I don't target Miami too often anyway. But
and this Detroit Thunder matchup, KCP, Reggie Jackson, we didn't really talk much about him. These are the types of guys you're looking at if you do trust Vegas and you do trust that sort of total, because it's looking like they're going to keep them close. So if that's the case, maybe you want to take a look at some of those guys if you sort of trust that line,
Yeah, and one thing to mention about KCP is his minutes are always huge. I
Hmm.
mean, the guy's always in the upper 30s, and he never really kills you for a floor. So I don't mind him in cash games, and I think he certainly has upside if you're going to take Vegas into consideration.
Right.
But with LeBron James out, I think J.R. Thompson becomes kind of an attractive option going up against Houston here. And you look at J.R. Smith; he's all over the place as far as previous games, but it's a great matchup. Going to get a little bit of a usage bump, and certainly has a matchup against Harden that turns the ball over quite a bit. I think you can actually tack on a few J.R. Smith steals tonight um, to kind of heighten his floor and upside a little bit.
Yeah, and as long as he wasn't at the club last night, we should be good. We should be good on J.R. Smith hitting value. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. I mean, again, Philly's bad, but I mean, at 3,800, I don't hate Nick Stauskas. He's kind of been reasonably consistent lately. You're not loving the upside there, but if you're looking to free up some space and you don't like Shane Larkin, then maybe throw him in there or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I kind of trust J.R. Smith at that point, as sort
Yeah.
of the guy for value.
Yeah, and I mean Stauskas does have a decent matchup DVP wise, so I don't mind that call there, especially if you're kind of banking on that one staying close and need to pay down at a guard spot. So
Hmm.
moving over to small forward, and it's you got Kevin Durant up there, and he's coming off a monster game. I don't see the matchup being a problem for him because Durant's pretty much matchup proof anyway.
Hmm.
I think he is your highest floor, highest ceiling guy. I'm not quite sure I'm going to be paying up here. Even though small forward is really top heavy and really weak down low, I still don't think I'll pay up for Durant.
Yeah, I think where we're headed is sort of paying up for those guard high priced options instead of sort of. I mean, I don't hate Durant either, but I think I'd rather pay up for Harden. And sort of when you look down a little bit, I'm not really into paying up for Paul George tonight either. I don't know about that matchup either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think Paul George is kind of. If I'm going to be paying up a small forward, it'll be for him, um,
Right.
just because he's one. I mean, he doesn't have. He's a tier two guy compared to Durant, but I mean, you look, he's averaged 26, 6 and 3 in 3 games against Chicago. He's going to be out there, going to be the high usage guy, and um, outside that game where he got hurt against New Orleans, he's been really, fairly consistent. You can't say that a lot about the guys down low. So I think Paul George is the safest play on the board there, and then points per dollar wise kind of makes him an attractive option. But uh, I'm probably looking at taking some shots at cheaper guys.
Yeah, I just think there's so many cheaper guys, and then you can just get a James Harden. So, obviously he's in play, but based on my roster construction so far, I haven't really been able to. I haven't even really looked that closely at him. So, yeah, that's if you can fit him in, great. But I haven't been able to. So you're a better man than me, or woman, excuse me.
I love Robert Covington tonight. I think at that price tag, and just he's going to be forced to play 30 minutes just due to injuries anyway on this team, and averaging 15, 7, and 2 over the last 10 games, 2.3 blocks plus steals per game. He's gone over 30 fantasy points in all three since coming back from injuries. Or sorry, 3 of the last 4 since coming back from injury. And Charlotte's not great against the 3 or the 4. They're not bad either, but I don't mind the matchup. But I think Covington kind of does it all. He's been rebounding a little bit more, and he also has defensive upside.
Yeah, I just think that Ish Smith Covington sort of contrarian game stack might hit for you tonight. So I'm definitely intrigued by that.
Yeah. Thoughts on Otto Porter? Are you looking at him in cash? You think he's
I
decent?
want to. I like it. I like how he's been playing. I sort of like his situation and his role right now. The matchup, it's not great. I mean, I know it looks great, but it's not great. And I don't know. He's all right. I'd stick to tournaments with him though, and if you're playing John Wall, but I wouldn't just play him on an island by himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe I think with Ariza there, and just with LeBron being out and Beasley kind of in tournaments as well, that kind of Houston small forward duo kind of takes them
Right.
off the map a little bit more, given they're cheaper.
Hmm. Definitely agree. Yeah, the interesting thing, I'm not sure who has more upside tonight between Beasley and Ariza. I think that's going to be a dance you have to play, and sort of you might pick the wrong one, but I think they're both sort of in the same range for me tonight, and obviously they're valued similarly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of who gets hot or not, and that's Beasley. Is Beasley going to do it in 25 minutes, or is it going to be Ariza in 38? Which
Right.
you kind of take the minutes in cash, but
Hmm.
I think you could lean towards Beasley, especially given his high usage down at the 4 there.
Right.
Moving on to power forward, Nerlens Noel questionable tonight. This would be a loss and kind of one that we've been dealing with the last 2 games, but you've seen Carl Landry pick up some minutes. Jeremy Grant, questionable as well. You could see Covington at the 4. You could see a mix of just all sorts of stuff from Philly tonight.
Right. And this is where sort of the cloth gets revealed for this 76ers team. It's like, okay, I can definitely see a lot of ways this team just gets blown out tonight, you know? So that's the other end of the spectrum if you're looking at Philly tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're looking Carl Landry, it's not a tough matchup. I don't see many great defenders down there lower for Charlotte, and I think as a punt play, if you need them, you maybe give him a look. Um, you know, because he produced well against Golden State, produced well against Denver. And if he sees 25
Yeah.
minutes tonight, I don't hate it, but
He was to put it in a simple way, he was a lot more fun when he was like 32, 3,500, you know. That was a lot more fun. That was a lot more fun for Carl Landry. But
that's
yeah,
true.
I mean, in play for sure.
Power forward, really top heavy tonight, and I think the clear cut top options go to Kevin Love and Draymond Green. I don't think they're particularly priced badly, especially Kevin Love, with no LeBron James, and his usage takes, well, in the 3 games James has missed, it's taken a 6% bump. So he hasn't played particularly well in those games outside the last, but I'll be looking at Kevin Love pretty
Yeah.
much in all my lineups tonight.
You were on him when we first started talking this morning, and man, it's gonna, if there's one guy tonight that's really tough not to like roster, especially with price considered, it's pretty easy to fit him in. And that's sort of why he's one of the guys where roster construction kind of makes it fit that way, and why maybe a Paul George doesn't necessarily make it into my lineup tonight, because if you pay up for Harden, you pay up for Kevin Love. That's kind of where I'm going. So yeah, Kevin Love, tough to not fit him in every lineup for me tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's below 7K. You don't get that. Well, we have this season, but you usually don't get that. And especially without a LeBron James, you're going to see kind of an old school Kevin Love come to play tonight. And
Right.
not only in one of the most fantastic matchups of the night going up against Houston and how they've struggled against power forwards this season.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it's hard. And if you wanted to be different, you could look at Thad Young, or you could look at pairing him up with Kevin Love. But Thad Young in play, Draymond Green in play. And then it gets a little bit iffy.
Yeah, I'd say that describes it pretty well. You're looking at Marvin Williams, Aaron Gordon, both priced relatively nice. I'm okay with both of those prices and both of those sort of matchups, but they've been pretty inconsistent lately. Stick to tournaments. I think bumping up that price tonight for Love is definitely the option if you can. But hey, if you're looking for that sort of utility spot, I'm not against either of those guys tonight.
Yeah, me either. And Gordon's minutes have kind of trickled down from where he's been, averaging just 27 over the last 5 games. But he has a couple 30-point games there of late. And I don't hate the matchup at all against Brooklyn. So I think it's tough because, you got Marvin Williams in the blowout factor, but he could still possibly even see the same minutes as Gordon in a close game. So comparing the two, I think Williams is a little bit safer, but I think Gordon has a little bit more upside.
Right.
Anyone else you're looking down low? I mean, it's absolutely. I mean, you were looking at a couple Orlando guys now that Vooch is out, so I'll let you head into that.
So now that Voos is out, I'm kind of looking at Andrew Nicholson. Been over 23 fantasy points in 5 of the last 6 games. He's sort of a jump shooter. Again, he was one of those A10 stars that beat up on my UMass Minutemen. So I've seen quite a bit of him, and it seems like he's actually translated sort of that jump shooting game to the NBA a little bit. So he's been getting rebounds too. Pretty consistent. I mean, other than that Detroit game, he's been pretty good. And for 3,100, it just opens up a lot. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at there. But other than that, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm with you there. I think taking a look at some of the other guys at that price. I mean, he's kind of the only one that's really an attractive option. Um, but really, outside of that, there's not much down at power forward.
Mm-mm.
So, moving over to center tonight, and I mean, it's kind of another top heavy area, but there are some attractive guys below 4K or below 5K there. But up top, we mentioned the possibility of Drummond not being able to be force fed like he has been this season. But I mean, really, I mean, he's been dominant. He's in a matchup where he could be dominant. Kind of if everything falls into place. And I think that's what you're banking on to happen, and I don't see it happening.
Right. And again, I'd rather just pay down for a Pau Gasol tonight. But yeah, I don't think Cantor's going to be a problem for him, but I think the minute Steven Adams plays is going to be an issue. And I think when you look at sort of who the guys are around him, I think you mentioned Brook Lopez might sit tonight just based on some of the previous things that happened.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned if he sits tonight just because of the last road back to back he set. Were some reports coming out with Brooklyn about possibly just shutting down him and Young, for the rest of the season. Given They've played a heavy workload, they've kind of been this team's horses for the last 6 weeks or so since Joe Johnson's been gone.
Right. And I guess we can talk about Pau because we don't necessarily disagree. But you have a little more caution than me. I love Pau. I don't think he's quite Kevin Love tonight, but I think he's sort of the tier below that in terms of value per dollar. So I'm looking at him in sort of that utility or powerful or center spot. Maybe teaming him up with another cheap center or something like that.
Yeah, I think I like him a lot. I like his high usage. I don't hate the matchup. I don't think it's a great one, but I don't mind it. Just given it's Pau Gasol, he can dominate in pretty much anything. And his price has dropped a little bit, so it does make him an attractive option. But also coming off the back to back, it's kind of the same thing. I'm kind of worried about with all the Bulls is they're banged up and they're kind of really fading out of the East there. And if the Pacers kind of get to a sizable lead or it's not really in reach, how much run does Gasol get trying to get back into it, given his age and just injury concern overall?
Right, that makes sense. And he's going to be very chalky tonight. So the value there kind of gets negated a little bit in tournaments because of that. But yeah, no, definitely a guy I'm looking to pair sort of in that utility spot with a cheaper center.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about those cheaper centers because there are a few, and we'll take a look. I mean, it's Ian Mahinmi, Enes Kanter, and Al Jefferson also in below 5K. And the more and more I look at Mahinmi, I think he's going to have to be out there and going to have to play 30 minutes. And I like the matchup for him. Chicago struggled against centers. And I mean, 3 matchups against Chicago is 27 minutes per game, and he's gone for 28 fantasy points on average. Definitely don't mind that. And I think the upside is even higher for what he's been doing lately.
Definitely. And of the guys in that range, I definitely agree he's the best option there. I think Kanter has some interesting upside. He's been pretty solid lately. I mean, he's been a little inconsistent, but considering the price, I think he has 35 fantasy point upside. So you don't hate that at 4,700 on DraftKings.
No, and people kind of look at Andre Drummond, they're like, "Oh, I don't like targeting guys against him." I mean, Detroit's in the bottom 5 in defensive efficiency against centers, so it's not one to shy away from. And you're looking at that total and definitely going to, consider guys to get some exposure to it. And while Cantor's a riskier play, he's also a cheaper play to look at a 106 total or 109 total there.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And then we got Big Al Jeff.
Yeah.
You like it. You like the matchup. You like his little 2-game sample size of going 16-8 with 3 blocks in time against Philly. And the matchup's great. They're terrible at rebounding. They're terrible at defending centers. Can he get 25 minutes and produce big time? Yeah, he can. But he also has a little bit lower floor than desired. I think he can fall less than 20 fantasy points, although it'll be tough for me to see that happening against Philly.
Yeah, he's sort of in that Tim Duncan range of minutes right now where it's pretty risky every night, but I think the upside's there enough tonight just because of the matchup that I could see him pretty hitting or exceeding value by. I mean, I could see him falling in that 25 fantasy point range, which you're happy with. So, yeah, definitely in play.
Yeah, I like him a lot. Anyone else you're really looking at for center?
Again, I think Dwayne Dedman for Orlando now that Vucevic is out. I think both those guys are in play. Him and Nicholson. Obviously, Dedman's been the hot hand the last 2 games, but I think both of them are solid options. And I mean, if you maybe even punt both of them in a lineup, you can fit a ton of those high end guys in. So definitely in play and definitely something you should think about for roster construction.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So, high scores player on the night, is it James Harden for you? Because I think you've said James Harden, his name more than anyone else on this podcast. So, is he your top scorer?
Yeah, I think so. Floor and ceiling, he's my number 1 tonight.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna say Curry repeats and goes for a big game as far as top score on the slate, but. We'll make it interesting. Let's go value. Who is your favorite value play below 4,500?
I'm going my boy Nicholson, man. He's gonna shoot those 17-footers.
Oh boy,
best shot in basketball is what I hear.
All right. I'm going with Shane Larkin. I like Shane Larkin.
Yeah,
below, but yeah, I can't argue there.
That's fair. I like both of them, to be fair.
Yeah. That's going to wrap things up here with the Minutes to Win It. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all great tools and content.